welcome in, everyone. RFK Refugees Podcast. Ted here, John here. Just like the end of DC United season, have a bit of a rough start to the end of the 2024 DC United season. Ted here, John here to recap things. John, how you doing, my friend? Hope everything's going well for you.
I'm good. I just, before we started, was talking about how I have heartburn from, I think I drink water. So that is the stage of life that I'm currently at. And just breathing air gives me heartburn. So that's cool. I was in person for the game on Saturday. So I'll have like real feelings about it, having saw all of it. And it was a bit, I think we talked a week ago, and it was like, John, how will you feel if they don't win this? And I was like, I'll still feel good. I didn't expect them to be here. And I'll talk about the fact that I don't think I was right. I don't think I knew myself. I was not honest with myself. How was your weekend, Ted?
It could have gone better. As I think we've discussed, the sort of disappointing end to the 2025 season. We also have been getting some sort of a stream of news that's come in related to DC United from Stephen Goff. So that maybe has put a damper on things as well. But I think, like you, I maybe have a different experience. I watched the game. I kind of left thinking I'm disappointed, but I'm thinking, it wasn't. I'll get into some of my thoughts. I've kind of had some moments to decompress. I was pretty upset on Saturday, and then I've had Sunday to kind of just breathe in, relax, look at the results, and I think maybe I'll have maybe a little more even perspective, maybe. And I'm not blaming you in any way, but you did, spend a lot of your time. You went to the game, you drove out to Audi Field. That's a lot of investment, and I can understand coming back feeling very excited and then feeling like, why did I just do that? The only thing I regret is not going to City Stadium, because I was like, wow, that would have been a much more fun result, because the Kickers did clinch the playoffs.
Weird.
So
Weird. I want to say thank you to listener Carlos, who gave me a ticket to go to that game. I appreciate it, even though I left feeling kind of sad. And before we get started in the game, it would make sense that we talk about where we are now located on the internet. If you wanted to find us, we're not posting on Twitter anymore for a bunch of reasons. I'm sure you could just Google the internet people leaving Twitter and you could read all of them. But we're on Threads now. I'm on Threads all the time. Ted is on Blue Sky all the time. Make sure you're following us in both those places. I'm posting on Facebook and Instagram more. So, all the places you can find us, we're just going to be there more. I just want people, if you listen to this show and you still have a Facebook account, or your mom does, or your uncle does, and they're posting about the election all the time, and you want to give them something else to do, if they could just like or follow our page and get us to stupid 100 so that we can stream on there, that would be great. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'd love you to join the Patreon. I'd love you to do a lot of things, but the low bar ask is just please follow us on Facebook so that we can live stream on another platform. That's all I'm asking.
And we know that a lot of you all have, left Facebook. It's no longer the cool place to be for
it's really not.
It was the millennial place to be. But just find that account. Just go ahead, jump in, come on. Just give us that one like. That's all we're asking.
Your password is likely like Lil Jon 2004 or something, and just get back on there. Just hide all your party pictures and then just like us. That'd be fine. And then the other thing I want to make sure to let everybody know is that if it's something we're trying the first time tonight. I'm not sure if people are actually going to utilize this, but now we're going to do call-ins for our Patreons during the show. You can call in and tell us about how you think about the game, and you'll get to be, speaking on air. So make sure that you are subscribed to our Patreon to get that link and to figure out how to do it. We've not been able to actually do it yet, but we'll see. We're trying to do it. It's a hope. We figure what better time than the end of the season to try something out.
Yes, exactly. It makes perfect sense. All right, John, let's get into it. I think we've stalled enough on this, and let's get into the horror show that was DC United's final regular season game. I want to start. We're going to get plenty of time to talk about the negative of the game, and maybe hopefully some hopeful stuff moving forward, though it's dampened a little bit, I'd say, in the past hour or so. We'll get into that in a minute. But overall, I want to say, you were at the stadium. I'm sure it came through for you. The sound and everything like that. Let me say, the crowd was into it. The Chico stand was massive. It was loud. It was incredibly just you could hear the chants. You could hear everything. Fans showed up. and that was really cool to see. Just exemplifies the point that I've made, is that once this team actually can be successful, we hope they will be more successful, that the fans will show up. This was a game I don't think a lot of other markets from the 1996 era teams would show up, maybe the exception of KC and LA and some other ones, but for a game like this, I feel like there's some markets that maybe get left behind, or they don't have fans that are as engaged and sort of hungry for a team to be successful. So that was a really positive thing to see.
Agree. The vibes were so good in the first half. You're standing up and applauding corner kicks, getting corner kicks and stuff. The vibes were it was very cool to be in a game in the stadium, in that stadium, for games that mattered again. It felt like it had been forever. It made me miss that. The fact that I was walking around running into Jaime Moreno, the fact that it was a sellout, it was all great vibes. Even after the game, even however it went, I was like, I mean, how much are season tickets really? I'm sure the games that I don't use, I'm sure I could sell, which, as we all know, is the fool's errand of all season ticket holders for DC United, is thinking that there's a secondary market and that they'll get their money back if they don't go to the games. But I was thinking about it. It certainly hit me, even though it's an hour drive with no traffic. I was like, well, maybe, who knows? But no.
Yeah, no, it didn't happen that way. DC United, vibes are good, I would say, in the first half. I was a bit nervy, I would say, in the first half. Started 0-0, DC United with some chances. I'd say right off the bat, Christian Benteke getting a wonderful opportunity. Great save by the Charlotte goalkeeper, whose name escapes me, but I know he is, the shoe-in for goalkeeper of the year. So this was a match, unlike the previous two matches, unlike the match against Nashville, unlike the match against New England. Charlotte are a team that has slowly kind of built up a pretty good team. And they have a very stout defense. They have, of course, Tim Ream, who they grabbed in the summer transfer window. Like I said, they have the goalkeeper, the presumptive, I believe, if I've been listening to most.
Christian Kalina is the name.
Yeah, Kalina, to be the goalkeeper of the year. So this was a team that was going to have a strong defense. And, looking back on it, maybe this game should have thrown some more red flags than it actually did, because you have a team with a stout defense. DC does have a pretty decent offense. But they maybe don't have a true number 10 difference maker that can actually, really sort of break down a defense. They haven't really shown an ability to do that. So maybe alarm bells should have gone off about this game than they did. It sort of played right into the hands of Charlotte. I would say Charlotte sat back, wanted to sort of frustrate DC, and it mostly worked. They got broken down, I'd say, about 3 times. One was a save from Kalina, and the other 2 times were where Benteke was ruled offside. And, if he holds his run, rightly, holds his run maybe half a centimeter, maybe we're talking about a completely different result, and we're previewing a postseason game. I don't know. Any other, thoughts that you had from the first half? Any standouts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we talked about this at halftime. They were going down one side. They were focusing on the right side of Charlotte's defense. And I think it did not allow any other player on the roster to have much of – it was the Jared Stroud show and Aaron Herrera show. And the left side of the field, the middle of the field were making no real impact at all. And that was obviously a decision. They were trying to do that. But I felt like it was handled for the most part. They were not – I think if they don't have another source of attack to keep them honest, it's very easy to sit back and defend across from that spot. You can just people have had problems keeping Benteke off the score sheet, but it is doable. If you have center backs of a certain size, if you can push his body outside the 6 towards the outside the 18, it's doable. And that's what they were able to do. And the crosses weren't very accurate either. So I think that, people talk about the team being too one-dimensional and that actually Benteke is bad because of that. But I think that as this team moves into the offseason and they start to build the team in the full image that they want it to be with less roster constrictions, although none, you want to find another vector that can create their own chances dependably that doesn't require that cross, because it makes the team a little bit too easy to defend, particularly when Charlotte had for the first 45 minutes no real intention of going forward. There was like, it was so obvious it was a counterattack situation.
Mm-hmm.
And the second half showed how effective that was and how stretched DC was. And, and when we get to that, I think there's a question to be asked about the tactical discipline and also the game plan and mindset going into that second half, about the substitution pattern and just sort of, because in the post-game press conference, Troy was like, we were going for the win, which you didn't have to necessarily do in the second half. We could have gotten through with the draw, but it was very obvious in the first 15 minutes of the second half that was still the plan. And I think people can have gripes about the intelligence of that plan.
I don't have a gripe with that plan. I really don't. I personally didn't think. Personally, I wanted this team to go and win this game. I wanted them to win this game. I wanted them to have that home field guaranteed for the 8th seed. I think a postseason, because I sort of like the role we're going down. Making the 8 and 9 seed. People are saying you don't really make the playoffs; you make the postseason. That then gets a chance to play into the actual playoff window. Even though marketing will just have this as the MLS Cup playoffs begin. But I kind of like that method. But basically, this would be hosting. I don't know, like being 9th. Even though I would have preferred it over what happened if that Orlando goal had counted, I would not have been really satisfied with the team sort of getting, even if they got the draw, they would have still been in 9th. They would have been going on the road to Montreal because Montreal beat NYCFC. I think you could have gone for the win. So like we talk about the lineup, they had in the center midfield, they had Martin Rodriguez and Matthias Klick. I can understand what he was going for in that situation, but I do wonder, like, if you're going to play that type of, like, really we're going to go for this, we're going to gun for it, we're going to just, throw numbers forward, because Martin Rodriguez, before was not even, he was seen as a winger. He was not seen as sort of a center midfielder. He's kind of developed into that role, and he's been okay, but it really is sort of the role where he says go for it. I do wonder, if you threw in a Borisy now, if you threw in a Matty Petula, could you have had maybe a little bit more of a structure to sort of hold up defensively, not get yourself caught in the second half so much, and then still have the opportunity to still have a lot of offensive pieces to kind of push it forward. So I did have an issue, looking back on it. I agree with him for going for the win. I just think he kind of sacrificed a lot of the structure.
He did, for sure.
Yeah, and I think worth two other. Go ahead. Sorry, do you have anything?
No, just to say that he had Eno, Knaus, and Patola on the bench, and that's a clear decision, right? Like those are 3 players you could have put in that position that would have given you maybe more of the ball. And I would say, Boris Eno comes in the second half, does not perform, does not look good, does not pass the ball well, doesn't hustle, doesn't try to get back. It was not a good 30 minutes from him. I was extremely disappointed. It was my first time to get to watch him in person and sort of get to watch him off the ball, and I left unimpressed. Matty looked pretty good, but as far as making that decision early on, maybe even after the first goal, trying to put a little bit more rigidity in there, because they were just carved open like a can of tuna every time. The defense was pushed up so far, and they didn't have a player staying home that had any sort of ability to win the ball. It was a mess. And then the scoreline became the scoreline, but after 2, it didn't matter. But,
yeah. Small shout out, I think, to Lucas Bartlett.
Oh God, yes, please.
First half, I thought he really kept Patrick Ajerman. I think I should know that name. I'm just making sure I pronounce it correctly.
You got it right.
But he held sort of Ajerman, really kept him in his pocket most of that first half. He does pick up a goal in the second half. I think a lot of people are kind of going at Klick for that. I think it's for the second goal. I'm not really sure. Klick's like trying to track back. He's like already, played basically this two-way role for so long. DC's completely been out of shape defensively. They're all over the place. I'm not really sure. I look at Klick in that situation and think, yeah, he's the only one at fault for that play. And so, I think, it was sort of the worst case scenario for this team, which was they push forward, they don't get the goal. They don't get any sort of offensive that sort of, any sort of goal that pushes Charlotte maybe out of that shell. And then Charlotte are able just to hit them on the break. They were able to do a pretty good job of it in the first half. And then, like you said, it just kind of all fell apart. Teku DiPietro offensively, I thought had a rough game. Gabriel Pirani also, again, not what you sort of need. And that's kind of like this feels like a game that was just kind of all encompassing of like 2029 sort of, or 2024 is the worst aspects of it, in that, the team is kind of one-dimensional offensively. They had a couple moments with Christian Benteke. Players that we hoped would step up this year didn't step up. A Teku DiPietro or Gabriel Pirani. Click, I don't think had a horrible game, but I don't think he had an impactful game. We'll get into his situation coming up next year. And then you also then look at, again, defensively, the defense continues to be a massive hole. I mean, this was not a game that Charlotte won 3-0 comfortably. They won it on three breakaways that resulted in the goal. So
David Schnegg did not look healthy at all. They were clearly rushing him back, and I look forward to him getting a full offseason, full rest, and then him playing 25, 30 games. That's what I need to see out of him, because at fullback we have one of the best right backs in the league, and if Schnegg can be healthy and do the things that we've seen him do a little bit when he was healthy and on the field, that part's solved. It's just the center back situation needs to be sorted, and I think goalkeeper could be looked at as well. I think it's certainly okay to Alex Bono getting his option picked up is fine. It does not necessitate him to be the starter. There's a reason why he's been a starter and a backup and a starter and a backup and a starter and a backup, because he's on different teams throughout his time here. That's just sort of where he sits. He sits right at that line of not a game changer, but not someone that you can't stick in there and still win games. But I think that if you're looking at a way to make this spine more effective, is the center back positions and the goalkeeper certainly, and you've already spent the money in the center of midfield. So that's where else you can do it. And you're not going to do it on the fullbacks because you're already set there.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I'm fine with Bono returning. I don't think he's the problem.
No,
I don't know. I think you want another goalkeeper in there to challenge him. I think you want somebody, and potentially somebody, to also take that starting job. Whether that's a young goalkeeper that you think that you're going to try to build up a little bit, whether you go out and maybe trade for a veteran or somebody, or sign somebody from abroad or bring him in, or maybe utilize that DP slot. I mean, all options are on the table. I think defensively is where this team needs to look to improve the most, I would say, is in the center back position. They have to find a way to stop letting in goals. If they're going to play this aggressive style, they need to find defenders that can meet that. I think Bartlett can do a pretty good job, though I wouldn't be opposed to signing 2 starter quality center backs to kind of compete with him.
Yep, he played 32 games this year.
Yeah,
no one could have expected that. No one should have expected that based on his pedigree. So he got an extension. It's warranted. I think it'd be great if he's a rotational center back on this team. We're in a much better spot.
Yeah, agreed. And we'll get into maybe one of those people who may be able to take that center back role or might be on their way out. I guess anything else we want to cover in this game, it's a massive disappointment. I've kind of leveled myself off of we make the 8th spot. Maybe we hope to be in that first round. We were going to get probably absolutely pasted by Inter Miami anyway. This team had no ambitions of winning an MLS Cup. It's disappointing that it's still we have to wait another year to be at least a part of the postseason. And I will say, for me, missing out on this, and maybe it shouldn't impact expectations for next year, but for me it has. It's you got to figure out a way to get this team in the plus. I'm not even thinking I'm not even saying 8 or 9 anymore. I'm saying 5th, 6th, 7th is a bare minimum expectation for next year for me. I want to be in the playoffs. I want to not be in a playing game. I want to be. You have, $6-7 million in cap room coming up this year, even with, what we've talked about with a player who might be coming back that maybe we aren't so keen to come back. We'll get into that a little bit. You still have a massive amount of cap room that you can play with. In this league now, you can have DP stars that are bad, and you can still find a way to be successful. Cincinnati had probably the worst DP signing this year. They are still sitting in that top 4 spot. They're still a team that could go on a run in the playoffs and be competitive because they've built a structure around them that is so good they can handle those types of moves. DC has never had that type of structure. When they have had bad DPs, it has always sunk them. So, I think putting that into perspective, this really is about next season. This is about the reset. This is about the real reset now. This is where the real rebuild work we're going to be. We're going to have probably at least 5, 6, 7 players coming up. So anything else you want to drop about this game? Anything else you want to talk about?
I wish it hadn't ended the way it did, because then I would have been able to be more appreciative of some of the players who won't come back and sort of take that in a little bit better. I was too disappointed. The third goal came in, I was walking down the stairs instead of thinking like, all right, there's quite a few players that are on this field right now that we're never going to play for DC United again. And, I should process that and appreciate it and say, okay. But I didn't, and that's a bit. That's fine, but whatever. I think that I leave being more excited about next year than I was even before. I feel like the fact that there is such an opportunity for change and development, but also expectations, are good. I think that's a positive thing going into this offseason. And everyone's saying the right things. Mackay is saying the right things. Troy's saying the right things. The owner's silent, but that's not uncommon. I guess that's fine. I hope that, and I probably won't say this, and probably just have to either won't be true or whatever. But like I think that there are expectations on Troy next season that if we don't go where you said, then they need to make a move. This year is not the thing. Give him everything he wants. Build a team exactly in the way he wants to do it. If we are worse next year than we are this year, then I don't want to have a expectations need to be met and consequences need to be doled out. The Dave Casper reign is over. The era of being allowed to coast on bad mistakes for excuses has to be over. And I think, honestly, these are two guys that get that and want that. I think they want high expectations. I don't think they want to be mediocre forever here. They're not talking like it. Watch Troy's post game. I want to encourage everyone. I think on YouTube it has like 12 views. So you haven't watched it yet. Probably go watch it. At least the first 5-10 minutes. About sort of what he just said, like, we're not close. We're nowhere close to where we need to be. It's not like we were just there. It's like we have so far to go. And I think that's good. that's a good thing. That's a good thing to realize even right away.
Yeah. And, with regard to that, I think there have been some positive signs, off the field, which is something we haven't been able to talk about. And I think that's kind of gotten buried in maybe the disappointment of making the playoffs. But this was announced, I believe, before the final game, DC United launching a full-time academy program starting the U16 region. I think it was asked. I believe it was asked. I want to say by Lambert asking Nothing Emeritus on Discord says, how big is the DC's announcement for a true residency academy being fully funded on a scale of a huge to the club changing? Bit of a loaded question there. I'm going to admit that, but yeah, I think this is significant, and we've talked about for years about this team doing things that sort of bring them up to sort of the standard. They were at RFK for so long. They got the stadium, and then now it's like, all right, now we got to play catch up. But it was, I think, what became very evident for us and why we've missed the playoffs now for the past, really past 6 years, along with lack of direction, is that the team just never seemed to move quickly enough. The training facility took longer than it needed to be. Everything to kind of just get this club up to the standard of like a regular MLS professional club. They took way too long to make their academy free, for instance. That was another thing that took way, way too long. This type of move, though, to sort of we're going to say have a full-time academy. Literally, it's going to be like almost a resident type academy. This is not an academy where you're, just training like you're on like a travel team or something like that. This is actually like full-time training. They are going to be in a school type program where literally they just play soccer. This is stuff that RSL has been doing, that Dallas does, that Philly does, especially this sort of full-time type of program. And that's significant. And I think it's also a significant investment in the area and shows that, there's a direction. And I think it takes a change, like bringing in an Ali Mackay saying, look, Jason, you brought me in here to change things. This is one thing you can do to start changing things, is to do this. So that's potentially a huge deal because it sort of elevates you above the sort of median You don't just have like a full-time, you don't just have an academy where you're just having players come and train. You actually have where they are literally, this is what they do now. This is part of their life. We want to bring them up into the first team. You still need an ex-pro team. They've talked about, they're hoping 2026 for that. It seems ambitious.
It does. It does not seem for sure. That's for certain. The way Mackay was talking about it on Pitch Bass,
yep,
did not fill me with like, oh, that's for sure going to happen. He was very much like, that is our intention. That is certainly what we are working towards.
I hope he thinks he can convince the ownership to be like, look, okay, this Baltimore thing is going to take a minute. No one's going to decry the missing of like if we just start this like DC United 2, and then when we move them to Baltimore, we're going to rename them.
Please,
new
God.
Marketing. Yeah, just do that. Just do it. Just get a team on the field because it's impacting things. It's impacting how players can develop. And if you're making this investment for a full-time academy, and that's what I kind of hope maybe the players from Mackay is like you start this full-time academy, and then you could say, once those players at 16, 17, they're starting with the U16. My guess is they're going to like start at U16, and then those players are going to become U17, U18. They'll move it up as sort of the players move up. At the time those players from that U16 group are ready, it's like, okay, now we need a next pro team, whether it's in Baltimore or elsewhere. Like these guys, we need a place for these players to play. So, but it's certainly something to watch.
Yeah, keep both of those things are, well, the academy even more so is don't look for that to be immediately impactful. That's a couple years from now where you're starting to see players that might have gone to college or whatever else have made a jump sooner and are easy to, there's going to be opportunities for them to train and integrate with the first team at a much earlier age. I think that's going to be really important. And then the next pro thing could pay dividends immediately. Yeah. That's the most frustrating thing. You can look at probably 3 players on the roster right now that would be better off today if we had an ex-pro team already. And it's not, and until 2026 is still a bummer. Like, Jackson Hopkins is I was going to say him, but by the way, he's likely to be the longest tenured player at DC United after the options are exercised. But
Jeremy Gray would be another player I think that could have benefited.
Yep.
Maybe he would have had a different path. Maybe it would have been the same, but maybe it could have been different. But
Jacob Murrell is a player that would have had a lot more minutes, and now he has had. Let's see, how many minutes did he get this year? He got
7 minutes,
866 minutes.
Not terrible.
Not terrible. 6 starts, 27 games appearances, but I feel like that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Honestly, that is much better, more minutes than I thought he was going to have. But I think he would have done better in a starting position at a more regular basis. I think there's other players too, like you said. But
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, so a lot of things so far. Let's talk. Let's get into the meat and bones of next year, though. Let's talk roster next year. We've talked about this a lot. I think it's really. I would say Matt Doyle did the biggest statement, sort of. Showing just how much cap room this team will have. He goes through all the players. He mentions, Mateus Klick. We'll get into him in a minute, but even then, like you're talking like $5-6 million of cap room. This team will be the most have the most cap space of just about any team in Major League Soccer. You're looking at Martin Rodriguez is gone, Dahomey gone. That's already $2 million in salary just right there that you're getting rid of. Obviously, Steve Birnbaum was on 800-some thousand. He's going to be gone. That's another 800,000. So just. This team has a moment where they can actually, they're not going to be burdened. And really the excuses have run out. There's no more excuses anymore. This team needs to go in there and they need to, Mackay needs to go and make the right signings. I think it's going to be ambitious. It's almost like it's a good problem, but it's also like they're going to have to get a lot of hits too. I think we've seen some good signs on their player evaluation. I'm not ready to throw in the towel on Borisy now just yet, but he has had a worrying start. We'll see what happens with him, maybe in a full off season, maybe with a little more structure behind what his role is. Maybe that'll improve for them. I think we saw Matty go through some of the same struggles. So, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for him next season. But, I think we've still seen their ability to, find good players within Outside of that, we talk about Crowner Antley. I think he's the biggest what if for me this year. He looked really good to start that season, picked up that injury. So, but it's a lot. They're going to have to bring in a lot of players, and you can't expect every one of those to be hits. If you get a 50% hit rate, maybe you're trending closer to where we are right now. If you get a 60 to 70% hit rate, then you're looking more at more at maybe being where we want to be, which is sort of firmly in the playoffs. That 7th, 5th, 6th, 7th range, maybe top 4 if other players do better. So
there's something to think about here too, just the way that the roster rules work and everything else. That's a lot of cap room, but there's also a cap on the number of international spots you can bring in. So if you're looking at the world market, you're constrained. If you look at, I'm briefly looking through the 2025 free agent lists. Most of them are option held. So this list is kind of whatever. But if you look down here, I don't know that there's a 4th spot playoff team from these options, from the available. There are a couple players that are interesting and that could improve the team, but nobody that is not a lot of game changers on the free agent list. Jeremy Ebobisse is a name that I would like, but other than that, there aren't any like super obvious pickups. There are a couple, but it's all that to say, like, we'll have to see. It's going to be a really interesting concept of where, how many international spots do we have available? Are you looking for U.S. internationals that are abroad that are looking to maybe come back?
John Anthony Brooks.
Griffin Yao says hello.
John Anthony Brooks, perhaps?
Didn't he just? I think he just signed a contract extension wherever he's at.
Yeah, he's at Hoffenheim, but yeah, I don't know. Could be something. Could be interesting if we could entice him back. I think he would be. If I'm looking at like no international spot, still 31.
Is he only 31?
He's only 31.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, currently at Hertha Berlin in the second Bundesliga. I don't know crazy. If that would cost you a DP slot. Their DP slots are going to be a little tighter than maybe we initially anticipated. But I think he's a player that you could look at and say if you could convince him to come here. I was currently trying to look at what his minutes have looked like so far. I think he's been pretty much a rotational player though for them. So again, something to look at. That's a player I would definitely have it here in a heartbeat if we could make it work. So
it's a fun list to look at Yanks abroad. I haven't been on that website in about 10 years. Timothy Chandler still playing. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, it's going to be I would say an exciting offseason because of the numerical flexibility. It'll be very interesting to see what he can do from a roster's perspective. It's great that Mackay is a former agent. I think that's going to be really beneficial. I'm wondering how many trades we take on that are somewhat overpays, but because we have the cap room where we soak that up, maybe that's a route. Because if you just look at the free agent list and the option players, it's not going to happen there if we're international constrained. Because I think we do have quite a few international players. I haven't looked at the numbers. But it would be interesting to see what we're able to do. In the past, that meant Dahomey. So hopefully we do a little bit better than Dahomey.
I think that's the idea. That's the idea here. I think there could still be some players around sort of the around the trade windows that you can go out and get. I think there could be some defensive players as well that you could find. It's going to be that we have the half-day trade window, which I think will be December 9th. December 9th, 10th, I think, is usually when it's around. It's right after the MLS Cup, basically before they start getting into like the expansion draft and everything. That's going to be a moment, I think, where you're going to see if this there could be a flurry of activity that Mackay's doing to try to set himself up, either trading players, getting players in to basically to solidify themselves defensively, finding some new talent. I expect this team to be very, very busy. I also will say, don't be surprised if I would say, like, I'm not expecting this to be a complete team by the end of March or April. I would expect them to still have some flexibility because the summer window is where I will actually not be surprised. And let's go ahead and talk about this too. Mateus Klick, he had the option year. I think many of us, we've talked about on the show that early in the year, we were like, yep, we should re-sign him. He's been great. He has sort of tapered off this year. It hasn't been as effective. I still think he has a ton of value. I still think he is a good player. I still would like to see if there's a way to keep him a part of this team. I would like to see his role a little more well-defined. I would like to see maybe somebody else come in, take over a little bit more of those creative responsibilities. He can kind of sit back, be the sort of destroyer, the number 8, the ability to sort of hit that long ball, hit that long pass, sort of break lines that way, while also having somebody, as a number 10 that can actually handle the more dribbling into the box and creative chances. But according to Stephen Golf, I'm not sure if this is a misprint from Stephen Golf. I don't think he would make a mistake like this, but apparently Matthias Klick will be back next year. We'll see if, there's a way they can work out a different contract, or we'll see what the situation is. $1.9 million per season. I led the team in assists, but scored just twice. He turns 35, obviously. According to MLS, Klick is entering option year. However, he reached the playing time threshold in 2023. So not last year, but not this season, the last season.
It would be very funny to me if they didn't know that. If similar longtime listeners of Zoltan Stieber had a situation where they did not read his contract very closely, and he was owed more money and had another year, and they're like, please go away. So he did, and they paid him out. But I'd be interested. Hopefully that didn't happen again. It's a problem, I think, from a roster building perspective, and like how big you could go with this. It's kind of a good problem because he had, I believe, 10 assists. He's certainly a player you can find a way to utilize. It just, I think Tam was the way. And I think if he had an option year built in that was due to appearance bonuses or whatever, however they qualified it, I don't think it would be for a pay cut. I think they were trying to figure out a way to ensure him more money. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to the person familiar to the situation, but it's
his agent for sure.
I just Klick's agent, I'm sure.
Yeah,
they're like, hey, guess what? I'll be back. I've got money. I think it also might be here's my silver lining to this. DC United is definitely not. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for them to find a sort of game-changing type player in the winter window. If you're talking like an international, like majority of the work has happened. It's where we got Christian Benteke. It's where a lot of teams do their business to sort of find their big time game changing player in the summer window. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing you have that contract for another year. You can kind of ride this out, and then you still have that buyout option. It would then be, a fraction, half of that, 1.9 million. So you're looking at, $900 some $1,000. They just dropped, 2 some million or 1.5 million, however much they dropped on buying out Yaz. So this would be peanuts compared to that. You can exercise that buyout. If it's really not working out, things aren't going well, you have the option to exercise that buyout. And then you leave yourself open to the summer window to bring in that DP. And then in the meantime, you get a player who still is contributor, still his underlying numbers as far as shot creating actions, as far as assists, expected assists, are still like in the high 99th percentile, high 80s. He still is a good job at sort of creating chances. So that's my sort of 2 cents on him.
I have 2 questions for you before we move on.
Sure.
One of them, do you miss looking at how the back line sorted out this year? Do you miss Donovan Pines at all? Or no?
No.
Okay. That's fair.
I don't. He's doing well in League One. That's League One. I think we've seen now from Opta, like the MLS is like skill wise is like top 8, top 9, or something like that in the world. And those are people looking at underlying numbers, underlying stats. I think it's great. He's doing well in League One, but that's a very, very different league. It might be more of his level. So,
and then the second question is, should we have gotten Tim Ream? He's not even a TAM player.
Yeah. I think that's where then I look at a John Anthony Brooks. I'm like, give me John Brooks. Go out, pay a fee, pay a transfer fee. Maybe whenever his contract is, he might be only on like a year contract. I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but maybe he's a guy you look to maybe bring in the summer window.
But Tim Ream was an every game starter for Fulham in the EPL, and they got him for nothing, and they're not even paying him above the TAM threshold. It's wild to me. He looked good to me. He looked really good on the field. That's the kind of player you think. I imagine he's coming there with the idea of either A, he likes the locale, maybe he's got family there, maybe like this is a club we wanted to play for that manager. They were already a lock for the playoffs, or were looking like it, and DC United maybe wouldn't have that opportunity necessarily. But that's a player we're missing. You need like a field general in the back that has miles. John Anthony Brooks would work for sure. He has an injury history that is somewhat troublesome potentially, but who doesn't?
I mean, point? I would argue. Signing on a 37, 38-year-old. Here's the thing about Tim Reams. I think it's a good signing, but I do worry a little bit. If I was a Charlotte fan, he's 37, 38. He seems to be holding up, but once it happens, man, that fall off is steep, and we've seen. He
did break an arm or a shoulder, but that's not like a big concern. He's not going to break another one, probably.
Yeah, I'm curious about like how many like appearances like John Brooks is actually making for this team. It definitely seemed to me like I'm kind of reading a little bit about the transfer. It seemed more like he was like, I want to kind of come home. I'm ready to, I'm ready to return to where I started, kind of thing. So it definitely sort of feels a little bit like, a situation where he wants to return. So I think an MLS could be an option. He doesn't take up again that international slot. I think that would be something interesting to look at. So
we will dig deeper on this as the offseason continues. I think we haven't talked about this, but I think we're committing to every week through the Spirits elimination or championship, and then we'll probably go to every other week as dictates. And that's when we'll really get into the roster deep dive, pie or cake or however we're gonna decide to do it, but also sort of looking at these players, because that's what people like. People are always asking us like, who would you sign from the Cyprus League? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm just trying to watch. I'm trying to watch these two teams that I have to cover every week. But we'll dig into that, particularly because I think that the trade window is going to be important, but then also maybe figuring out an American player or two that could come back and make a difference without having to have a roster spot problem.
Griffin Yow's a name, certainly, that, if you could convince him to come back, new regime, new opportunities, definitely a name I would watch.
Paredes is probably harder because he's already in the Bundesliga, and when he's healthy, he's playing, whereas Griffin Yow is playing for Westerlo, so that's not impossible to get him back.
And, moving, people would say, well, why would you move back? People have this, anyway, we've talked about it a lot. People have this idea that, Europe is this big, grand old thing. And I say, depends on where you're playing in Europe. If you're playing in the French league, you're playing in the German league. Yeah, absolutely. You're playing in the Belgian league. I think it's a step up for him to sort of find a level. But I would say coming back and being a week in, week out starter of the MLS team puts him more in the MLS picture, and particularly gives him then a launching pad further in his career if he can show he can play well at that level. So, let's. I did want to talk a little bit. Matej Kambone. Apparently, the update on the latest news from him, from Stephen Goff, is that looks like I think it's Bournemouth have gone in. They've now offered, I believe, $1 million, could rise to $2 million with the sell-in percentage. My guess is if the offers were maybe higher, the sell-on percentage might have been lower, and they might have just increased possibly that sell-on percentage would be my guess. If I think, John, you were saying like it was closer to 2-3 million. Here are my thoughts on that. Especially I would say now, especially if Matthias Klick is coming back. I think if you're Mackay, you sit down with Troy and you say, do you think next year Matej Kambone could be a starter for this team? The answer is yes. We're gonna, and as long there's not extenuating circumstances with Matai being like, do this now. Otherwise, I'm not signing a new contract with you. I'm going on a free transfer. So do it now. No more new contract. Or he flat out just, you're going to upset the player balance. But if he's like, you know what, I want to, sort of cut my teeth here, and then maybe I get a move, rather than going to Bournemouth and getting kind of lost in, they're a Premier League team. That's a little bit of a high step. I'd rather develop my time here. But I think you asked that question to Troy. Do you think Matej Kambone can be a starter next year? If the answer is yes, then you keep him. If the answer is nope, I think it would take a couple more years. I think you sell him. I think right now for this roster build, taking that, because you get that $1 million, you then are allowed to then transfer that all into GAM, which can then be used to help out your roster. I think you make that move. It would stink because, I feel like we have a lot of these players, Griffin Yao, Matej Kambone would be added to that list of players that
we sell low.
Yeah.
That's We sell low, we sell early, we sell low, and it's not the outcome you want, but it is certainly, to your point. Troy has got to be playoffs or bust next year, so I think that he doesn't have the luxury to not take that gamble when it's there.
Yeah, so be curious to see. I could see DC turning it down. I could say nope, Matai is going to be worth double that once he starts getting some minutes for us, and we think he can do that. Also, it looks like Mr. Christian Fletcher is getting more minutes over at the Nottingham Forest Academy. All indications seem to be that they will accept that offer. And I think depending on how he performs, that could be GAM in the pocket as well. If you're talking like a couple $1 million, that's GAM that goes right into the team's coffers. So different scenario to what we've seen in the past, where this team, sold players low, but didn't really have, that really didn't give them the flexibility or extend the flexibility that they have to go out and sign big time players. So.
By the way, Westerlo is 2/3 the size of Oakton, Virginia, where he is from. So I would be surprised if they have a Nando's in Westerlo. So there might be quality of life reasons why you'd want to come back to.
Yeah, and I think
I think we have a Belgian listener, so I'm pretty sure that we do. So I don't want to disrespect the province of Antwerp. I'm just saying it's not the biggest place.
Not the biggest place in the world, but we got did want to break down some sort of just to sum up this year. I think a lot of people talking. OVD on our Discord says, "What happened to Ted this year?" Referring to Ted Pietro.
Got hurt a lot.
Yeah, got hurt. I will say I don't think Ted. I think people look at it as regression with Ted. I don't look at it as regression. I look at it as he kind of stayed the same. There wasn't like a level up where last year we saw him, and I think it's noticeable. Last year we saw him level up very quickly, where it was like there was a new aspect to his game we were learning. And this year it was he has kind of the same aspects to it. I think it's going to be an interesting storyline coming into this year. If you go out and let's say you use, I am presuming even with Mateus Click, assuming he's a DP, this team still has one DP slot they can use because they now have the cap flexibility to buy down Matty Peltola to where he's not a DP anymore. Can't use him as a U22 slot. He makes too much money. But they can use him as a buy him down sort of a TAM level player. But you will still presumably have one DP slot. You go out and make that a number 10 chance creator. That occupies the one role for either Gable Pirani or Teku Pietro. So I think there'll be a competition there because both have kind of settled into that number 9 role. I think Ted does some things a little bit better than Pirani, but I'm a little biased on that front. Some people might have a slight disagreement on that.
He does everything better than Pirani.
Yeah. There are a lot of Pirani fans out there, man.
There are.
I think we've seen Pirani be better off the bench. So,
great impact sub sometimes.
And I think that also hurt. I think you could see Teku Pietro start to round into form, I'd say, around Leagues Cup. And then Pirani started to play well. The problem is Pirani is much more limited in his ability. He wasn't a number 10. The only way he was really effective was when you just stuck him up front with Benteke and said, just get on the ball, dribble, do some stuff offensively. And that forced Teku Pietro to be further away from goal because now he has to play the left wing back. He has to track back. He has to do that because Pirani wasn't doing any of that. I think that also hurt Ted a little bit as well. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch as we head into this year. Where's Troy landing? Both those players are going to be potentially competing for the same spot because there's going to be a ton of different players that are going to cycle in this year. So it's going to be interesting side. Where would you say? There's always that player. Who's the line player? Would you say who's the player that's kind of the difference between your starter and your bench player? Where would you call that line player? I have an idea on who that is, but.
In what anywhere on the roster?
Anywhere on the roster, yeah.
I don't know. Tell me who you're thinking of. That'll help me think of the frame of the year.
To me, it's like Jared Stroud, if that makes any sense at all. That's a player. That's a position where you look at it and you say, yes, he does some good things right, but he's not like a game changing type player. He's a player where if he becomes a rotational player next year, I think that's a positive thing because I think that means that we've had other players that have kind of stepped up. And that's where you can tell.
Chris McVay is mine.
Yeah, that's a good call too. I think there's a lot of players maybe you could classify that. I'm more looking at players like who's a player that you think is good, that you think is like Jared Stroud. I think was a good player this year, but this is a player that you would maybe want to look to next year if you want to be higher than where you are in the standings. You want to have a better option in there, an actual more game changing type option.
Which is unfortunate for him because I feel like that's been his whole career is have a good year. And then everyone building the team is like, we could do better. Even though you did very well, we could do better. And it's true, but
it's also a player too, where it's like, you want some competition in there. You want a player that's maybe pushing him a little bit. I think we saw the competition push Matty Pautala to be better. When we got Boris now, suddenly it's like, oh, you're not the only option now at that defensive midfield spot. Russell Canals also coming back. So I think that competition can kind of push players to be better and to elevate their game. I think that could push a guy like Jared Stroud to kind of elevate his game. I think we saw it all year from Russell Canals. They would always try to bring in guys to sort of replace him. And then he was always like, he would elevate his game to sort of match that. So I think there's going to be, I fully project that this lineup, heading into 2020, here's another question. This last one, and then we'll talk Spirit. Yep. I'm going to go over under 6 changes to like what you would consider the starting 11 for DC from 2024 to 2025.
The starting 11, not just on the roster. You think there'd be 6 new players, or that's the line you're setting?
That's the kind of, well, let me think about this a little bit. I'll go a little lower, actually. I'm thinking because we're going to have Aaron Herrera. We're going to have, obviously, Sheneg's going to start. Presumably Bono in goal. I think maybe the McVay-Bartlett center back pairing might be a little different. Presumably Peltila is playing. Presumably if Flick's back, he's playing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go 4. Over under 4 changes to the starting 11.
I'm going to say over. But by one.
By one?
Mm-hmm. just over the line. You should have said 3.5, and I would have said over 4.
Yeah. So 3.5. We'll say. I'll say over as well. I think there's going to be more changes maybe than some people are projecting. So it's going to be fun. All right, we got a few minutes. Let's talk about a team that's actually playing in the playoffs, and that is the Washington Spirit. 2-0 victors over Chicago. Sort of another rotational game. A lot of players still missing or still kind of coming back to form. I think this has been like incredibly, and so far it's worked. The coaching staff has basically looked at these last 2 opponents and they said, our second team is better than this team on their first team, and they've been right. And they've picked up 2 victories now. Continue to be kind of in that driver's seat. They have one more game on the road against North Carolina. That could be the game where they could plummet a little bit down to earth. You would hope maybe for a little bit of room. But what did you make of the Spirit game against Chicago?
Just to follow up on that, I think that that game against North Carolina is the game where you want to have all of the players who have been sitting out available. Mm-hmm. You want to have Rodman playing from the start. You want to have Sarr coming in. You want to have Santos coming in, even if they're on the bench. I think that you want to go in strong coming into the playoffs, and I think you want to preserve that second seed, which is right now you're tied on 53, but you got a better goal differential than Gotham. So I think that's important. It's been really cool to see these players, Courtney Brown, Heather Stainbrook, play.
Yeah.
Stainbrook. Must be a name from my past. That Heather getting a goal is very cool, but like just seeing them sort of like, all right, well, Andy's down. We're gonna have to change basically our formation and how we're gonna roll with this. And McKenna Morris has turned into a goal scoring threat that I don't think was expected or intended, considering she came in injured. She's on a 1-year deal. It's kind of absurd how much success they've had at sliding new players in as like just new pieces on the board and having it work out. No one's really looked at a place anytime they put someone new in. I think that's just wild and not the case for most teams.
And really it justifies the contract they've given to Jonathan Giraldes, who has come in and has been able to, there are many teams in this league that I feel like would have folded and collapsed at this point, losing the amount of players that they did.
Yep.
You look at some of these other lineups, I would say Chicago is one. they basically just had Mallory Swanson and Alyssa Nair. Those are the two sort of main type of players that really did any sort of impact in this game. Everybody else was like average for the Red Stars. I will call it too. I thought Hal Hirschfeld was fantastic in this game.
Good.
I think she is. We talked about, this is an opportunity for her with Andy Sullivan going down. Can she fill that role? Starting to look like maybe she can. It's boosted some of my thoughts. We'll see how they do against North Carolina. They're a really good team. But my thoughts heading into the playoffs are a little more boosted that maybe they can do something good. The press was suffocating for Chicago. They were literally on 6s and 7s trying to figure out how to deal with it. Courtney Brown, I thought, also has really stepped up. She was able to sort of be that press and really take the game to Chicago in a lot of ways. I thought she was good. Again, Hatch also getting some good moments too. So looking more comfortable in that center forward role.
Can't imagine that was I'm shocked. I'm very shocked by that. The red card was interesting. Did you have a thought on that?
It's the correct call. Unfortunately,
even without contact and.
Yeah, you're still going. You're making a swipe. It's strikes or attempts to strike is for violent conduct. So you can strike and miss, but you still attempted to strike, and it's a red card for violent conduct. It's unfortunate because I feel like, and I was kind of watching earlier in the game. Da Silva and Kawasi were going at it first minute. I believe there was Kawasi fighting for a ball, sort of on the defensive side of the game. Sort of wins it. Da Silva is kind of upset and is like, I'm just going to take you out, and just kind of kicks her out and, picks up. I thought should have maybe picked up a yellow card for that type of foul. It was very retaliatory type of situation. So, these two were going at it the entire game. Correct use of VAR, I felt, for Da Silva. She clearly grabs the hair of Kawasi. Kawasi responds. It's an unfortunate situation in that, Kawasi's the one that basically initiates it. She reacts, and it sort of provokes a response. I thought this was probably one of her strongest games elsewise. She was really good attacking that left side. Really gave me, hope about, we've talked about some of the missing pieces and how I've maybe been looking for her to step up a little bit more. I thought she had a really good game. Other than she unfortunately picks up the red card, she'll be out. But
she was great against Louisville too. She's been in Trinity Rotman's absence. She has really, really stepped up, and I hope that she doesn't lose her momentum here with the suspension game. So
yeah, might give her a little bit of rest. But
there you go.
But yeah, I also thought again Casey Kruger stepping in as well for Paige Mateer out on that right side. I thought she was good. I think it's good to have a player like Paige Mateer who's been able to sort of step into that role and been very good. But it's also, you can tell there's a little more polish with a Casey Kruger. Definitely very, very good on the press. So overall, just a strong performance for this team, and it's sort of a professional performance in the ability of them to sort of go out there, get the win. They picked up the red, which was unfortunate. Thankfully, it was a double situation where they didn't find themselves down a man, because that could have been something if Chicago gets a tying goal. And Chicago did have chances. Mallory Swanson was very dangerous, even though it was really just a one person show on her side. There really wasn't any other sort of offensive help other than her. And I think it's sort of interesting. That's a team that's 6th right now, so they are definitely mid-table. And I really think this shows the gulf between the top 4 teams in the NWSL and the rest is so dramatic right now. We'll see with the Courage. I think the Courage are maybe one of the stronger as far as those teams go. Obviously, one interesting thing is old friend Ashley Sanchez has played herself back into the national team picture. She's been looking really good, sort of close out the year. So
there was something that I read that the players who were on the Olympic teams got guaranteed a call for the welcome back series, rather than it being on merit specifically. There was choices they had to make about who got called in about that. So not that she hasn't earned it, but there are other call-ins that was brought up by Emma Hayes as being I had some things I had to do. There was some business decisions that were made.
Yeah. So anything else you want to drop about the Spirit game? Any other moments? Anything else you saw?
I'm glad to see another 30 minutes, 40 minutes for Trinity. I think that as this team goes, she goes, or as she goes, this team goes. But yeah, no, I think I still think a championship's going to be hard. I still think that Orlando and Kansas City are, despite us being ahead of them right now on the table, are formidable, and we would struggle with the matchups that they present. I'm still glad that they're clinched. I'm glad that they've already got a home playoff game on the November 10th. Make sure you go buy your tickets. I hope that they get through this next game with no injuries and have those other players who have been out get a chance to get some minutes and not get their first minutes in a playoff game.
I think it's, I want to see them get that second seed. I think that should be the goal. And I think that to me makes it boost it that I think they can make the final. The Pride's going to be a tough matchup regardless, but I think it would be, and again, we talk about playoffs versus regular season. One games can get weird. They can get very, very weird. So it's going to be an interesting game against the Courage. I think this will be maybe a true litmus test of where things are with this team. If they go out there, they look the way they looked against Chicago. They put it in a comfortable, 2-0 win. Maybe sans some red cards. I think we can start saying, okay, maybe this team has enough. Has enough to push forward to the end and maybe be a legitimate threat and spoil the Pride's coronation, which I think many are expecting for the championship. So if they go out there and they look flat, they can't create the way they do, then I think you're looking at, okay, maybe we temper expectations a little bit this year. But regardless, extremely wonderful job like Giraldes has done with so many injuries that could have derailed this entire season. And he's able to sort of kept the thing on the tracks, kept the team pushing forward to where, you can't anything but call them still a contender, I think, for a championship. So it'll be fun. All right. I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. It was a very long show. We got a lot of off-season content, got a lot of Spirit content. We'll probably pivot a little bit. We're talking more Spirit as we get ready for the playoffs, as we steamroll into that. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. We will catch you guys next week. Vamos.